Welcome to Potions and Processing. I am your host, Raven White. This week's episode is going to touch on some much darker and disturbing content. So please be forewarned and take any necessary precautions to protect yourself and your mental stability. We have started to deep dive into some of the culty things I was raised in, and in last week's episode, I talked a little bit more about my dynamic as the oldest child and the stepdaughter. Before the head coverings, before the modesty, before the lack of adornments, there were the demons. Now, I think in every super Christian place, there are the talk of demons. Something that I remember very specifically, very vividly, was how easily it was to invite Satan into your home. That the inflection and the tone of your voice was simply enough to invite Satan into your home. Anything that wasn't of God could invite Satan into your home. Now, for a little bit of terminology, Satan itself doesn't necessarily mean the devil. Satan just means enemy. But for all intents and purposes, when I use the term Satan, we'll be referring to the devil. Satan was a hot topic in my home. Anything around demons, the devil, Satan was a big thing. And anything that was questionable was thrown out of the house immediately. I think that my stepfather really latched onto this idea because it gave him a newfound kind of power and control, because it gave him this new authority over what was godly and what was worldly. We already didn't have things like Disney and TV and traditional regular music and books and things like that. Pop culture was gone, outside influences were gone, and things from our family members who did not adhere to our specific religious beliefs also began to disappear. That included even phone calls with family and gifts from family and visits with family. Now, I had a different father, and my conversations with them and my relationships with them became heavily monitored. My phone calls were listened to. My letters that I sent to them were read before I sent them out. And some of this was because of the abuse that was happening within the home, because they didn't want that to get out. But also, I think, was because of the control of what was being filtered in because of our religion. But let's get back to Satan. My stepfather had a fascination with satanic worship, with satanic objects, and with the whole idea of satanic possession, and just the idea that Satan could be introduced and welcomed into your home. This cult that we had started to become a part of had sermons on tape that you could order in the mail, and he had ordered so many tapes about demonic possession. How do I identify demonic possession in your home? How to get rid of it? How to keep it from manifesting? How to exorcise it from a human if it started to manifest in one of your family members in your home. And he tried to keep this hidden from most of the family members, but I had found his cache of tapes and even had taken a couple of them and listened to them, and they were very disturbing. And you probably wonder why a young person between the ages of 10 and 13 would be listening to sermons of tapes about demonic possession. And that's because I had started to experience phenomena within our home that I could not explain. We had two basements in our home. One he had converted into his own little dungeony lair thing where he kept lots of guns, ammunition, all kinds of World War II memorabilia, which he was also very obsessed with. You will not be surprised to find out he was obsessed with Hitler and all of that nonsense. The other part of the basement was unkempt and had like a freezer where we had food stored in it, but it was mostly just unfurnished, unfinished, and very dark, very dirty. And I had a crippling, gut wrenching fear of it. I couldn't explain to you what that fear was, but it was so bad that I would go to try to close the door to it all of the time because I felt such a strong presence of something vile and evil lurking there in the basement. And the reason the door was left open all of the time is because the cat box was down there because we had cats. And it was my job to clean the litter box. And I would put it off as long as possible because I hated going down into the basement by myself because it was so dark and there was only one light bulb that you would have to reach way high up to click on. Have you ever seen The Conjuring when the mother is in the room and she has to click on that little light bulb? That's what it was like. The air was suffocating. It was like entering into almost another dimension. It felt like I was being enveloped by something otherworldly and something evil and dark and monstrous. And I don't know if anybody else in the house ever felt it. And I don't know at what age I began to really sense it, but it was about the time that they made me start building my cage. This is going to have to be broken up into multiple sections because it's a really hard thing for me to talk about. And I haven't really talked about it at length with anybody besides my therapist. When I was around the age of 10, about, my stepfather started to do construction in my bedroom. And my bedroom was about a standard size bedroom. I can't give you dimensions, I've never been good at math, but it was about a standard sized bedroom. And he had me help him bring in a bunch of lumber, 2x4s and plywood, and started to divide up the room. He didn't half it, he didn't even quarter it. It was like less than a quarter. It was maybe the size of a very small closet. And he built a wall inside my room and created this little closet in my room of 2x4s and plywood. And he had me help him do it. And he did not tell me the whole time that it was happening what it was for. The suffocation that I felt from that basement, it followed me through the whole house. It lingered, and I couldn't escape it. There was something terrifying happening in our home, and I didn't understand any of it. One night, I got up to use the bathroom. I flushed the toilet. I went back to bed. My stepfather had been in his basement, which was just below my bedroom. And my bedroom shared a hallway, a very tiny hallway between my bedroom and my siblings' bedroom, with the bathroom just in between us. So, my bedroom, bathroom, siblings' bedroom. All right? And my stepfather's basement just underneath us. My stepfather came up from the basement, came into my bedroom, turned me over in my bed, and said, "Why were you in your brother's bedroom?" And I said, "I wasn't. I went to the bathroom and I came back to bed." I was very confused. And he looked at me and he said, "You were in there touching them, weren't you?" And I had no idea what he meant. Why would he say something like that to me? He understood the context of what he was insinuating. I did not, because I was a 10-year-old who'd gone up to pee and gone right back to bed. And I said, "No, I got up to pee and I went back to bed." He did not believe me. He left. The next morning, I got up and there was twine wrapped around my door, locking me in so that I couldn't get out. And I had to pee so bad. And I was pounding on the door, and my brother heard me and he let me out. And we all got in trouble for that. And then that same day, the wood came in, the wall went up, and I was locked in my room for something I did not do and did not understand. The devil does have something to do with this. Not the real devil, but the devil was certainly blamed. And we're going to talk about that in the next video. I mentioned I still have nightmares about that house. Sometimes I still have nightmares about the basement, about whatever it was that was in that basement. I don't know if it was just a gut feeling that I was going to be trapped in something dark and confining, or if there was something more sinister at work. But we're going to talk about it more in the next video. And we're going to talk about how the devil spoke to my stepfather and how the stepfather used the devil to justify what happened in that closet, in that room. That's this episode of Potions and Processing. Take a deep breath. We're not in there, and it's going to be okay. I have very severe claustrophobia still to this day. I hate being in confined spaces. I don't really even like closing the door to the bathroom, to be perfectly honest. That still gives me anxiety, but I'm ready to talk about it. It's taken a long time, but I'm ready. Remember, we may be different species, but we're all part of the same family. So please, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will see you next week.